Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, Jessica Ray.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to the MotorWeek podcast. This is number 306. As you can tell, I'm not John Davis. He's busy this week. He's actually driving a pretty cool new car that we will talk about in a few weeks. But until then, I will be your host. And today we are going to talk about three new vehicles.
Who are you exactly?
Oh, I guess I should introduce myself. Well, Alec did. I'm Jessica Ray. Oh, okay. I am the podcast producer. I'm also the digital producer here at MotorWeek. So I think, is that sufficient, Brian?
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
Works for me.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about three new cars. First up is going to be the all-new electric brand Rivian. They're launching their second product, a three-row SUV. Then we're going to talk about the recently revealed 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe. It has a completely new look and kind of a new mission as well. And then we are going to head into the EV pickup world. Chevy has a new pickup that can, I guess, get some real work done. And then we have a lightning round about some new EV charging that is a brand new EV charging network from some majority of the new automakers. And then we're going to have a viewer question about why can't electric cars power themselves?
It's a lot of electric car talk.
I know, there's a lot of EV talk, but to be fair, we've been testing a lot of electrics.
Welcome to the 2020s.
Yeah, I was going to say,
really
it's not
is.
like, we don't make the cars, we just test them.
Keep them with the times.
And joining me today are two-wheeling reporter Brian Robinson.
Hello.
Over the Edge reporter Greg Carlos.
That's me on this side of the edge.
And writer Alex Kellum.
Howdy.
Now, before we get started, I want to address something really quickly. If you're a regular listener of our podcast, you may have noticed we've had some interruptions in our normal podcast programming.
Notably one interruption.
One main interruption that we really haven't been able to get you any podcasts. And we've also may have disappeared completely from your podcasting platform. So we unfortunately were dealing with some technical difficulties on the back end of the podcast that took kind of longer than expected to fix. No issues in production-wise, just how we distribute the podcast. We have an all-new website. We switched servers, blah, blah, blah. It's very boring. But just
ones and zeros got crossed, and one became a two, I think, at one point.
Call or write your senator, and sure, they'll get on our case, and we'll straighten it out.
But basically, great news is that we are back to normal podcast posting and production. I want to give a big thanks to our developers at the Sutter Group who helped us fix some of these issues. And not only have we fixed these issues, we also have some new podcast artwork. And now you can actually see the descriptions of the podcast, which you could not see before. So we've got some upgrades as well.
Let me go check it out.
Yeah. So
can we hurry up and do this so I can go check it out?
Anyways, just as the podcast producer, I want to apologize for the inconvenience, and we appreciate everyone for their patience as we worked out the issues.
Apology accepted.
On behalf of everyone.
Sorry, I had to get that out of the way. Anyway, let's get to the cars, okay? So first up, we have Rivian, which is, if you don't know who Rivian is, they are a relatively new automaker. They are an all-electric brand. And really, they're known pretty widely for designing and producing the all-electric Amazon vans that Amazon has been using. And they've had success with their R1T midsize pickup, and now they have finally launched their second product, the R1S, an all-electric three-row SUV. And there really is nothing quite like it on the market. Greg, I think you've spent quite a bit of time in the R1S. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, quite a bit. Maybe just shy of quite a bit. I would say. But enough to definitely get an opinion on it, and people seem to really look at this car when you drive by. Well, it's an SUV. But you are seeing more of them on the road. I see probably, at this point, like a Rivian a day out near me. Mostly the pickup, not as many SUVs, which the R1S is.
They're pretty easy to spot from their headlights.
Yeah, they're very obvious looking. To me, does anybody know the Iron Giant?
Yeah.
It looks like the Iron Giant, like where you have like the headlights are the eyes, and then the way the light bar goes across the nose is kind of like that, like little bit of a smile, like kind of man-made.
It's got that personality to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Does it sound like Vin Diesel or?
It does not sound like Vin Diesel. No,
that's a shame.
It is a shame. But Google it and then find a Rivian. You'll know what I'm talking about. So the R1S is kind of like the second phase of like the original Rivian mission. When I saw it at the LA Auto Show years ago, they had the pickup truck, and they're like, so we're going to do the pickup truck first, and then we're going to do an SUV. It's like, okay, and that's exactly what they've done. And they are very, very similar. It's basically just the R1S looks like the R1T with a cab on the back, and you can fit more people in it. We had the quad motor because we got one from an owner. This one was a launch edition, and I don't think they sell those anymore because we're past launch.
Yep.
But you get like little badges, and I forget what else. What else do you get with launch edition, Robinson?
It came similar to Adventure spec right now with the quad motor and like upgraded trim inside, stuff like that.
Yeah. So quad motor gets you 835 horsepower, but 908 pound-feet of torque is what everybody cares about. I took it to Mason-Dixon dragway, 3.3 seconds to 60. I was watching it in the video, and I noticed like there's a lot of like rear end bounciness when I take off. I don't remember feeling that at the time. I remember feeling it through our slalom course, which it did fine. But again, acceleration. The other notable thing about the acceleration is that it keeps up speed longer than most EVs will. Typically, when you like approach 100, it'll like really die off. It didn't seem to really die off until you got to about like 110, which was pretty much at the quarter mile, which was 11.9 seconds. So you start thinking about a 3-row SUV doing these kind of numbers. It's pretty ridiculous. Back to the whole ride thing, though. I don't know who else got a ride in it, but I kind of felt like the R1T rode like a pickup truck, which made sense because it was a pickup truck. And then getting into the R1S, I thought they might have like refined that a little bit, made it more of in line with the luxury SUVs, which this is really going against. And it still kind of had the same basic like truck-based ride, which isn't inherently bad. There's plenty of people out there who like riding in Jeeps and 4Runners, and that's cool to them, and that's fine. That's kind of what this feels like, where it isn't super smooth over bumps. It doesn't, it doesn't have that like luxury ride in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know how much suspension retuning they did between the two. I was curious about that. And plus, it
didn't seem like much.
Yeah, and the wheelbase is shorter, I think, by more than a foot compared to the truck.
Which would make sense for some of the bounciness.
Yeah, that would make that problem even worse. Yeah.
Right. Again, like I don't want to sound like I'm bashing it for how it rides. I mean, it rides how it rides. I don't think it's sloppy. I mean, if I thought it was like bad, I would say so. It's not. It just kind of rides like
just
a truck.
Like truck.
Yeah.
Which is fine. So the other thing that we noticed in this one, like the R1T, is like the heavy regen braking, which you can set a different level of regen braking, but even in its lowest setting, unless I miss something, like it's still heavy on the regen. And I for those, we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but regen braking is basically when you lift off the accelerator, it'll start slowing itself down and converting that spin into energy. But it's quite abrupt, I'll say that. It's like you let off and you don't coast, you start coming to a stop.
Which I guess is kind of interesting considering that this is a 7-seater. So the idea for this more than, say, the R1T is that you will load this up with people. There will be a significant amount of passengers in it. And I have to say, I think as a passenger in an EV, I would prefer for less regen than more regen, just because as a driver, it's
especially
much
on the highway.
Easier. Yes, absolutely.
As a highway cruiser, yeah.
That's a very big deal.
I actually forgot to write the range number down in front of me, Robinson.
It's like 320 something, or no?
The specific model we had was like 318, something like
Again,
that.
it does vary, but ours was
That's
like
with the
over
large
3.
pack. Yeah, if you get the large pack.
Yeah.
And I think in some configurations it can go more than that, I believe.
370, 380, something like that at the max with just the 2-wheel drive.
But the launch edition, obviously they were only doing the quad motors for that.
It's a trick little SUV, in the words of Robinson.
Ooh.
It's still like the truck. There's all these little like features where you can get like a flashlight, or like you can pull a little Bluetooth speaker out of it. It's like with the idea of going out and having adventures in this thing, more so than just being your typical daily driver. And it's kind of falls in line with Tesla, the other electric brand, where it's like more of a lifestyle. And I wouldn't say it's quite the accessory that a Tesla is in a person's life, but kind of along those lines of where it's more like, to me, this falls more into tech than like the automotive spectrum, if that makes sense.
And it feels more, even though almost everything about it is exactly the same as the truck, it just seems more mainstream, whereas the truck still had quirky stuff like the gear tunnel all the way through, and then like the onboard air compressor. I don't know if the R1S had that or not.
I don't recall, but
yeah, lots of cool extra features that kind of set it apart. And then the only other thing I'll mention is they are significantly ramping up their production this summer, way like 3 times the output of what they've put to this point. So expect to see a lot of them on the road.
Yeah. And if you have one, I'd love to know and hear from people, is there a Rivian Wave, like a Jeep Wave? Because I was in this one driving home, and somebody in an R1T was coming the other way and just started waving at me. And I forgot that I was in a Rivian. This happens. I was in a Jeep and people were waving. I'm like, what are you doing? No, but like I'm curious, like, is there a Rivian Wave? Because I will say, like, this particular Wave wasn't like the cool Jeep like finger flip. It was like a full on like
that excited.
Hey, you
have the same car, man.
Yeah, so it was a high energy Wave.
It's probably the same Wave that Tesla owners had to each other for like the first year that Teslas were on sale.
Oh, what is this one? Can you
No,
show
just a super excited Wave.
Yeah.
Like
Hey,
you're
it
cool.
has to be,
You're cool like me. Yeah,
Okay.
kind of thing.
And then there were
2
too many
car.
Teslas.
Yeah.
So let me know if you own a Rivian and there's a Wave, and next time I might hit you back.
Well, thanks, Greg. Definitely, we're looking forward to seeing more Rivians. Obviously, all we know right now is the R1T and the R1S, and I'm sure they have more models coming soon. Smaller, hopefully smaller, because these are mid-size. So the interesting thing about the Rivians is that both the pickup and the SUV are mid-size, but they're slightly larger than a normal mid-size that we would consider.
Volkswagen technique of
Well, and certainly inside compared to their gas counterparts, just because you have a lot more room inside.
But like when you think of like a mid-size pickup and where a full-size pickup lands, the Rivian is kind of somewhere in between that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had the right idea when they set out to do this. Mid-size, it's hot. Hot segment.
Oh yeah,
both.
absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next vehicle. The mid-size Santa Fe crossover has been Hyundai's second best-selling model for quite some time. It is second to the smaller Hyundai Tucson. And for 2024, the Santa Fe sees a huge departure in styling and both mission from before. And we now have the full details on what to expect. Alex, can you fill us in?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't spend any time with the Rivian, so I couldn't talk about that. This vehicle, I also haven't spent any time with, but that's okay because no one else has.
Yeah.
So it's all fair game. Yeah, so 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe, it's entering its 5th generation. This is all new, built from the ground up. The styling is very, very drastic for a Santa Fe. It's a big change, but some people will kind of liken it to some other vehicles you may see on the road. Me personally, I see a little bit of Land Rover in it. I remember I did the new Range Rover event and they had like an SV and this like copper paint, and there's a version of the Hyundai, of the Santa Fe, that has like a similar copper paint. Reminds me of that. Some people said Ford Flex. You could see a little bit of maybe like Bronco Sport in there as well. It's just boxy. That's the idea I want to get across. This is a very boxy design, and I don't say that like in a bad way.
But when you think about the outgoing model, which was very like sleek and curvy and
jelly beanish.
A little jelly beanish, yeah.
Now
absolutely.
it's the box that would contain the jelly beans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you think Hyundai, you may think of the letter H because that's how it starts. And if you don't, you're going to after seeing the Santa Fe because the H pattern, as they're kind of calling it, is everywhere. The lights, interior motifs, it's just everywhere. So yeah, if you get a chance to look it up, please do. In terms of size, it is still a mid-size, or it's a mid-size utility. The big thing here is it's got a third row again, which is pretty cool. Hasn't grown too much, though. We're talking about 190 inches long on a 111-inch wheelbase compared to what's outgoing. The outgoing was about 188 inches long, so this is not like a huge swelling of it. To compare it to another model, which would be the most recent Palisade, that's 197 inches long. So kind of you can put it a little bit in that ballpark. It's still smaller than the Palisade, but it's only grown just a little bit.
It kind of looks like we're similar into its cousin, the Sorento, right? Which is also a 3-row, but not quite as big as like the
Not
Telluride.
quite, yeah. So if you want to think competition-wise, you can look kind of like in that sector. You could also think of things like Ford Explorer, that kind of stuff. Like, just kind of picture
Pathfinder.
that. But yeah, believe it or not, the midsize crossover segment is hot. So there's a lot of options. But yeah, so 30 inches of third row legroom, which is not small, I would say. I think your average size adult for most like regular drives. I don't know about a long road trip, but we'll probably be able to fit back there. So it's not just like a, hey, look, we put some
utility third row.
Right,
It's
yeah.
a third row. Someone
like you can actually use the third row. I believe Hyundai, because we were kind of talking about it with the Rivian, and we see this a lot now. Yeah, they describe it as city friendly, adventure ready, which I think is a description that we see a lot these days.
Which makes sense because the Santa Cruz, I felt, was like that was their spin on it. Like
It's
city.
ironic because some of the biggest adventures I've been on have been in the city. So.
Well, now you can combine it all into one. With the
I wonder if
perfect vehicle
anybody
for it.
starts in the country and goes to the city. Like, would
back
they?
up the
Is there a
SUV.
car for that?
Well, that may be the next big paradigm shift with design
Yeah.
language. We don't know. The interior, I think, is another big shift here. I think it's leaning more into the like sort of luxury vibes or like the upscale
For
vibes,
sure.
and it's not just because they put H's everywhere. Of course, digital real estate. Yeah, I'm gonna harp on that a lot. There's, of course, we're getting like how Hyundai has like the dual. I think they call it the panoramic display. It's like the two 12-inch displays. That's been brought over. There's also like screens for like the HVAC stuff like that. They have moved the shifter to the column, and that now gives you more like center console space. There's like 2 like device chargers down there, and there's also a UV sterilization tray.
Sweet.
That is
So
interesting. So you can pop your phone on there.
Yep, if you touch something gross and you need to put your phone in a UV sterilization tray, it's in your
phone?
This is adventure.
I think you can
ready.
put,
Keys?
you
You
can
don't
put your
think you can put
keys,
anything in
you
there.
can put your wallet.
But we'll be putting that to the test.
Yeah. I'm excited for that. Powertrain wise, so the powertrains that are offered, and this is for the North American audience specifically, different regions, there's going to be different options and stuff, but just speaking to us locally, the powertrains that are available have not changed drastically from what we've already seen, but the lineup is different. So there is the 2.5 liter turbo 4-banger. That was not hard to say, but I made it difficult. Paired up to an 8-speed DCT. It's going to make about 277 horsepower. This is similar to what we've seen. Front-wheel drive standard, all-wheel drive available. There's also going to be a hybrid option, a 1.6 turbocharged engine, which I think on its own is making like 178 horsepower. That's just the gas engine. I don't know if they've come out and said what the combined everything's going to
I don't think. I think
it's like the Kia Flow 200.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a little. 200. Yeah.
and that's got like a 6-speed automatic. So those are going to be the two available at launch. I think other regions, like I think Europe is getting a plug-in version of it. I'm sure at some
We will
point
too.
we will be seeing
Eventually.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess the too long didn't read of that is the powertrains that are available, they're not drastically changed. It's just that the structuring of that's going to be different. Pricing has not been announced, at least at the time of this recording. I would imagine it's probably going to go for a bit more than what the current Santa Fe is, only because, again, they're taking this more like upscale approach to it. I don't know how much more. It may not be a ton more, but I think it will certainly be more.
I mean, it's definitely very different styling-wise. Like pretty much than anything that really Hyundai has done in their lineup. I can't think of anything that they have right now that looks like this. And that styling that was like on the Santa Fe, also we see on the Tucson, we see on the Santa Cruz, we've seen on a lot of their models. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how it reverberates too.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the journey the Santa Fe's had. Remember that first gen, the blue one that everybody had?
Yep.
My grandfather had
Yep.
one, just like that cute little SUV, and now we're talking about this like big blocky three-row SUV.
Same.
Crazy. What a glow up.
Yeah.
And I believe they also showed off like a XRT concept, which of course has like off-road tire or like all-terrain tires or stuff. So
They probably saw, between the Hyundai and Kia brand, were like how crazy people went over the Telluride that style.
Right.
And they were like, well, let's do a little bit something like that because we literally couldn't make enough of those things.
Yeah.
And how much people are willing to pay for off-road packages.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if this kind of further shapes Hyundai's design language going forward, or if this is kind of more of like an isolated thing.
Right. Well, thank you, Alex.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
stay tuned.
We'll
Great
certainly,
tease.
hopefully,
Great tease.
we'll be able to drive it soon.
I sure hope so.
All right. So before we talk about a new EV pickup truck
you're putting me
from
on the shelf.
Chevrolet, before we talk about that, we're going to hold that
Work truck,
to,
not just like one of those fancy look what I got trucks. I hear it's like an actual work truck.
This is a work
Robinson.
truck.
I can't confirm or
But
deny.
All right, well, I guess we'll find
we're not
out.
going to talk about it yet, okay? So hold on. First,
a
we're going to
tease.
get to our lightning round.
Ooh.
Now, this is an interesting topic because we've been hearing so much in the news lately about some shifts in EV charging. Automakers like Ford, GM, Rivian, Volvo, Nissan, and Mercedes-Benz will begin offering their electric vehicles with NACS ports, which are the
North American
Tesla,
Charging
the
Standard.
North American
Is that what it
charging
is?
standard.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
yes,
acronym.
that was
There's like-
correct.
There's like 3 different acronyms.
If not,
in
it
here.
should be. Yeah.
And so this is the ports that Tesla uses in their vehicles, and so far Tesla's it's been proprietary for Tesla, and so all of these other other automakers are going to start using them in 2025. But other automakers like BMW, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Stellantis, along with GM and Mercedes, are investing in building a new high-powered charging network in North America. They plan to install at least 30,000 high-powered charge points in urban and highway locations. And these chargers will be accessible to all EVs, offering both CCS, which is what everyone except for Tesla uses, and the NACS, aka the Tesla connectors. And these charge points will begin opening in the summer of 2024. Do you think a new charging network backed by the automakers will help solve our current charging infrastructure problems? Anybody want to start?
I think this is a multi-dimensional problem. Like, I think this is definitely a big step in it because, for a while I've been hearing people say, like, it's not as much range anxiety anymore as it's like infrastructure anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I go somewhere, 1, are there going to be chargers? 2, can I use those chargers? 3, are the chargers going to work? So I guess, like, in a sense, having more chargers and having them available in certain areas is of course going to help. But I think there's, obviously there's more to this. Like, are people going to be able to service them? That's like a big thing. So when they do break, are there going to be enough of them? Are people going to have the etiquette with chargers? There's a lot of things that I think go into this, but this is probably a good, like, if this is the direction we're going, a step like this is inevitable. Like, I think it has to happen. If you want to mass market EVs, you got to support them.
Yeah, I don't know how many chargers we currently have, but adding 30,000 more will certainly help. You say high powered, does that mean they're the 350 kilowatt or is something even more than that?
I'm thinking they didn't specify, but I think it's going to be 150 plus.
All right.
So
I guess. I bet you they call DC fast charging like high powered, and then they have some other.
Technically anything over
high-powered offense.
hyper power.
It's like
Just
high-powered
we talked
offense.
about
What does that mean?
Yeah, with electric. Yeah.
anything over 50 is actually considered a DC fast.
Right.
So, yeah.
Because it uses direct current.
We need more chargers. We do not need more charging ports. I'll tell you that. So if we could move to one standard charging port in the future, I think that is the way to go. That'll be some time because there are still some models that use different things, and that's fine. Like, that's good now, like that they're still offering that. But I think at some point we're going to need to just kind of bite the bullet and transition toward just every plug is the same plug and works for every car. As far as being backed by automakers, I'm curious, like, how reluctant they, like, if this was always part of their plan to, like, shell out money and help to get the infrastructure built, or if they feel like governments aren't doing enough and, like, to sell these cars that they are making. It's like, maybe are they feeling the pressure to, like, bring it upon themselves to offer the charging infrastructure because they know local governments aren't really doing it, or what? I'm just, that dynamic kind of, I'm curious about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting how this has all kind of come about in really just the matter of a few months, right? Tesla opens, or really is kind of forced to open some charge points to other EVs, and then, you know, a bunch of big automakers say, hey, we are now going to start using that same connector in our cars. And hey, and starting next spring, you can have an adapter and you can charge at any Tesla supercharger. And now we have a lot of the folks who didn't want to commit to changing their connectors. To say that, hey, we're gonna build the chargers. And I think, well, one of the things about Tesla is they have so many chargers and they are in convenient places for people.
As far as I know, they reliably work. And I think that's something we don't really hear
Yes.
in an announcement like this. They're like, we're adding way more chargers, but nobody really addresses, like, the reliability of the current ones we have. And to be fair, I have really not experienced some of the horror stories that I've heard with Electrify America and other brands where like you show up to like a 4-port DC fast charger and only one of them's working. Most of the time they are all, or maybe just, or like 2 or 3 of them are working. But there are plenty of stories out there where it's like you show up and they just aren't working, which really kind of screws you. So having more, I guess, inherently makes that problem better, because you're like, all right, well, you have more options. That way, if one's not working, you go to the other one, like a gas station. But it would be interesting if somebody would come out and, like, admit that these stations aren't super reliable, and how do we fix that problem? Is it a software thing? Is it a power thing? Is it a network thing? Like, why are they so inconsistent?
Yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to see reliability on some of these, on this new network, but also the reliability of the Tesla superchargers as they start accepting more and more brands, because that's just another complication. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to take a quick break here because I want to mention our sponsors. We have some really great sponsors. Lucas Oil Products. They are one of our newer sponsors, and they've been really excellent to work with. We also have Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper. And, of course, Tire Rack, who's been with us for quite some time. So we just want to give them some thanks. And coming up, we will talk about the new Chevy Silverado EV work truck. But before we get there, we have an interesting viewer question from someone named Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, dude, do they know The Rock?
Yeah, really.
Who
I can smell
Maybe
this
it is
question.
The Rock.
it's very unlikely.
That's what I was thinking. That would be weird if a person named Dwayne Johnson knew Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think this is the real Dwayne Johnson, but we appreciated
Could
the
be.
question enough.
Let's treat it like it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
just
yes,
in
you know
case.
what? You're right. You guys are right. Okay. So Dwayne Johnson asks, why don't batteries in cars have generators to recharge the batteries? Think every rotation of the wheels could keep the car running for a long time.
Yeah, we kind of alluded to this with the regenerative braking comment earlier, where we do technically have generators in the cars, not just through regenerative braking, but a lot of times these engines act, or the PHEVs, I should say, act as generators. They literally will charge the battery. But I'm assuming this is about EV specifically. So yeah, the way it basically works is when you're not accelerating, the motor essentially then turns into a generator, so that while all the wheels are still turning, it is now converting that rotation back into energy, which does feed the battery. The issue there is if you were to do it going forward, like while you were driving, then you're basically working against yourself. So like the more resistance with regenerative braking, the more energy you're sending to the battery. But if you were doing that while you were accelerating, then like it doesn't work because you're essentially working against yourself and losing power.
It's the age-old thing of perpetual energy is more often than not you end up using more energy to create the energy. So it's a net loss. That's effectively what that is.
So
Much like my idea of towing a diesel generator to power my Hummer EV and just have to never stop driving. Yes.
Yeah. Could it work? Yeah.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be the most efficient thing in the world.
So, I'm not an electrician or an engineer, so anything I say
Noted.
Could be wrong. But, I mean, we had generators in cars earlier in the 19th century. They're just not efficient. We moved on to alternators, much more efficient to capture and store energy. But specifically to hybrids, what a lot of times we refer to as an added electric motor is actually technically a motor generator, which especially all the European 48 volt things that
Mild hybrids.
correct, which essentially are there to power the electronics when you stop start. They can also power the car briefly. Those are indeed generators, but it's just there's no way to capture enough energy to then use that to power the vehicle for long periods of time.
Yeah, this is a question that I kind of see often within comments on EVs, whether that's like posts on social media or on our videos and stuff. And I think when you first think about it, you're like, oh, yeah, that seems like a no-brainer, right? If you're capturing energy, you should just be able to go forever. But unfortunately, physics does not work that way. But thank you, Dwayne Johnson, for the question. It was
Love
fun.
your movies.
Yeah.
All right, I think it's time to talk about a pickup truck, an EV pickup truck at that. And lately, pickup trucks have become a pretty normal family vehicle these days. I mean, in some cases, they are status symbols, right? I mean, we're driving $90,000 pickup trucks, and that's not weird.
I think most people trick themselves into thinking they need like a full-size pickup.
Right. Right.
It's just like, they are great, don't get me wrong. Like, they're great to have, but like, do you need something that big for like the 6 times a year you put something in the bed coming from Home Depot?
It's a good point but there are still plenty of people out there who use their trucks to do real truck things, right? And so they have not been forgotten about as EV pickups hit the scene. And Ford has their F-150 Lightning Pro, which is their base work truck model, while Chevy has finally launched their Silverado EV work truck. And Brian, you actually got to drive it.
That's correct. The Silverado EV is coming out, but just for the first part of the year, just as the 4WT work truck, which gets 450 miles of range, more than any other electric pickup truck to this point. 510 horsepower, 615 pound-feet of torque, all-wheel drive, and all crew cab with a 6-foot bed. And they look like your traditional work truck, painted in white. Everything inside is vinyl, rubber, and hard plastic.
I was gonna say, it's pretty utilitarian inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first year is going to fleet only. No one can, they're already sold. You can put an order in now for a 25 if you want this for your personal business. But backing up a little bit, we talked at length about the Silverado EV being kind of the Avalanche rebirth. So that's kind of what it looks like, just painted in all white. The work truck does not have the midgate. That's not coming until later with the RST, and
That's
also
where you can send stuff into the cab.
correct. You can fold the back seat
True
forward,
Avalanche,
and slide plywood inside, and still raise the tailgate. And it also doesn't have the rear steer of the RST that's coming. But to back up even further, you referenced the Lightning. Obviously, Ford came out first with their EV. Their approach was, how can we cram batteries and electric motors into an existing F-150 and get it out there? And they did, and by all accounts, been highly successful. The Chevy, they took more of the, this is going to be a completely different vehicle. It shares no parts with the regular Silverado pickup. Ultium platform, same as the Hummer EV pickup, and same battery pack that the Hummer EV has, but it weighs less, and additional years worth of development time gives it more range. And they're actually upping the range of the Hummer soon because of it.
They talk about that development time. Like, did they like seriously use that year and like make it legitimately better?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's got 350 kilowatt full dual level charging. So not to get too technical, but the Ultium platform has 2 layers of batteries, and you can charge them in parallel. You don't have to go through all of them. So you can get 100 miles in less than 10 minutes.
Pretty significant because it is quite a large battery.
The Hummer.
Yeah.
They don't charge super fast.
So $78,000 is what it starts at, which is obviously very expensive.
But that's just the one they're launching this year.
Correct. So 3WT will be out soon, which will be just 2-wheel drive and be about 20 grand less, I believe. And of course, they have the RST 750 horsepower coming out, which will have, that's like the flashy normal colors and the normal, really nice interior, that kind of stuff, and even a Trail Boss version on down the line.
What's the bed size?
6-foot bed.
So it's a solid 6-foot bed.
And they got charge ports everywhere for powering all sorts. Big frunk up front.
Nice.
For
Love a frunk.
storing stuff.
And towing capacity?
10,000 pounds. They originally said 8,500. They raised it to 10,000. And there is a heavy duty package coming that'll up that to 20,000 apparently.
So enough to trailer your diesel generator and
exactly.
then plug into it, right?
It's interesting. We actually did a lot of towing, which was cool to do. Towing with an EV is just a whole different experience. But it's when you plug a trailer in, it immediately cuts your range estimate in half.
Right.
But then based on what you're towing, it can tell the weight of it as soon as you start driving. And then it adds or just... it adds miles back on, which it will unless you're towing the full 10,000 pounds. It'll add more miles back in. So,
what is the tow experience like?
Well, there's no transmit, which is the big thing when people talk about like tow ratings and stuff. That has nothing to do with horsepower. Usually, it's transmission wear and tear and structural integrity of the vehicle. But going up hills, you don't get those really harsh downshifts. You don't get any shifting. It just seamlessly takes off like whenever you want. And the tow mode, which it automatically goes into tow mode when you plug it in, gives you full power, which you don't get unless you're in tow mode, which they didn't want to like admit for like fleet customers because like they don't want their, people that are driving someone else's vehicle all day long to have the full 500 horsepower. But you do get it if you go into tow mode, and it's a whole different driving experience for sure.
Regen braking with that, like going downhill.
Yeah, they do have regen. It's super aggressive regen, but again, when we were talking about earlier, it's a similar when you tow big weight like that. You usually have trailer brakes, and some of those things. Give you the same experience on the highway. They'll bring you to a stop when if you don't have them adjusted right. So all in all, it's a great package. And there didn't seem to be a whole lot of adjustment on the similar to like you were saying on the Rivian. Even at its lowest setting, the regen braking was still pretty aggressive. But we were in pre-production ones, so that that may get retuned and by the time they get it on sale, which is really now they're starting deliveries right now.
Did they talk about like who they're selling to or like where you might see these?
They didn't get into specifics, but big fleets, mostly government, which I would assume. So,
wow. Well, I mean, we're going to see more of these. Certainly, the more consumer-oriented Silverado EV, hopefully soon. Because all we've seen them right now is at auto shows and such. So, well, thank you, Brian.
Oh, hey, it was my pleasure.
Now, before we end it today, does anyone have a rant or rave?
Let's see. I could.
You have one,
I could
Brian?
rant about the Jeep Wave.
No, we were talking about that
before.
the other day.
But no, I don't want to offend anyone. Because I was driving the Wrangler we have now, and again, I was being waved at. I'm like, why are people waving at? And then I put it together. It's just not. I don't know. It's just not something I do.
The opposite. I was like, I'm in a Jeep. I get to wave at people now, and like half the people I waved to didn't wave back, and I was like, what is this?
Sorry about that.
It's
it's all right. Look, I get it. You know me. I wouldn't wave at me either.
Did anybody put a duck on your dash? Or
No,
anything?
no ducks. No ducks.
See, I didn't know that was a thing until somebody brought it up, and now I see ducks everywhere.
It's
so like you
a-
just like
Dash.
somebody's. I'm so sorry that I'm not hip to this.
Not in the
It's a
lore.
Jeep thing, Greg.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
I know, and that's
Yeah,
why I'm
yeah.
asking. I'm asking these Jeep people.
Yeah, Jessica.
So what's the deal?
So I think
if I had a, like, do you go out and buy ducks and just like
some
have a
people
bag of
do.
them?
No, literally, some people do. And so I guess where it started actually was just a couple years ago, where it was really supposed to be like one duck. And it, like, the duck would, like, you'd put it on somebody's Jeep and it would, like, be regifted. It was like the singular duck. And then people just
Forward duck.
Yeah.
started putting ducks everywhere. I've gotten a duck once, and I've owned a Jeep for 9 years about. And I've gotten a duck once. I was at the grocery store and somebody gave me a duck, which seems fitting,
given a
honestly.
duck?
No, because I
I'm not. The onus is on you now because someone gave you a duck.
Yeah,
now
you got to
you're
double
supposed
it and pass it to the next.
to pass the duck.
The beautiful thing about owning a Jeep is that you can commit to some of these things, or you don't have to commit to some of these things. If you want to
Being a person.
wave,
That's
Yeah.
what I
you
always
can
thought.
wave. If you want to give a duck, you can give a duck. I just have not felt like
Never give me a duck.
Yeah.
I haven't felt like going on Amazon and buying a bunch of ducks to go put on people's Jeeps.
Maybe your Jeep is just unduckable.
I think it's pretty boring, but that's just.
Then you need
that's
some
just
ducks
me.
for it then. Spice it up.
There you go. You plant ducks.
You know,
that
Yeah.
way people
okay.
think that
Like
I'm
you're
missing
in
out
on
by
it.
not ducking.
You're in on
You know
it,
what?
yeah.
I do sometimes see Jeeps with just like 15 ducks
Yeah, they're just
on
all on the
the
dash.
They're
dashboard.
just showing off.
Exactly. Yeah.
Again,
well,
that's why I don't like. The
I might
whole
have
thing,
to.
I'll
I
be
might have to
honest.
duck Robinson's Jeep actually. Now that it sometimes just hangs out here for a while, so I'll just.
I'll look forward to it.
What do you have? A TJ or a CJ? Wait, what do you have?
TJ,
Yeah, TJ. Okay.
Yeah.
2006, last year of the TJs.
Does anybody duck a TJ?
I don't know.
Have you gotten
I don't
one
know.
ever?
No, I've never gotten a jump, but I also have a goofy body lift on mine, so I'm sure most real Jeep people are, would think it's not duckable.
I don't know.
I hope your Jeep gets ducked.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening to the MotorWeek podcast. I want to thank our audio engineer, Jillian Cookman. I am the podcast producer, so just wanted to shout me out
Thank
for
you,
that.
Jessica.
We also want to thank our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. You can pretty much find MotorWeek anywhere on the interwebs. We're
Now, anyway.
yeah, these days. And you can
Until the
find
next thing breaks.
now you can find the MotorWeek podcast everywhere. We're on all main podcasting platforms, and you can also find us on MotorWeek.org, on our YouTube channel, on PBS stations nationwide. If you want to know when we air on your local PBS station, head to MotorWeek.org/watch. We're also on MAV TV. So you can head to mavtv.com and see if they are provided with your cable provider. And so thank you for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.